Let's bring in Jim Messina, who managed Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. David Jolly is a former Republican congressman and MSNBC political analyst. And here in studio, Julie Roginski, a Democratic strategist, co-founder of the nonprofit organization Lift Our Voices. All right, David, we know Donald Trump hates to lose, maybe even more than most people. So does he think he's not hurting his cause, that he knows best? What's happening here?
Chris, the vanities of Donald Trump have always been something that raises eyebrows, and he can certainly read polls. I genuinely think the last 3 weeks has been one of the worst chapters of a presidential campaign in modern political history. It's that bad. Donald Trump's in free fall, and it is because of the candidate. Sure, I think his team could have done more to try to define Vice President Harris coming out of the gate. These ads apparently that are about to drop now, making her soft on crime, hitting her on immigration or her record as a prosecutor. But in some ways, they missed that opportunity. And their candidate himself seems completely incapable of prosecuting any case. Right now, Vice President Harris has kind of won the right direction, wrong direction conversation with voters. And Donald Trump needs to make this race about a hard contrast of ideology. But he's really incapable of doing that, as we saw at the RNC convention and at his speeches since. He is just rambling and off message and unable to execute the case. Donald Trump's in trouble. He's in a whole lot of trouble right now with this campaign.
I don't know, Julie. I mean, some of this stuff worked, right? In 2016, calling people names. I was out with Jeb Bush. He called him low energy Jeb. All those kinds of things that seem to get under people's skins. So now he's calling Kamala Harris names. He's called her dumb. He's called her a crazy liberal. And he's also commenting on her looks. I want to play a little bit of that Elon Musk conversation last night.
She is terrible. She's terrible. But she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And actually, she looked very much like our great First Lady, Melania. She didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman. So we'll leave it at that.
I remember the day that Joe Biden stepped down and threw his endorsement to her. Several analysts said she has to define herself before Donald Trump does. How is he defining her?
Look. This is the same kind of misogyny we talked about before, right? She's dumb, she's terrible, but she's hot. In other words, is what he's saying. So I guess she's going to get a free ride because she's hot, right? Because women who are hot, in his words and his terms, get a free ride. I mean, this is a woman who's a former prosecutor. She's a former attorney general. She's a former senator. She's a sitting vice president. She's accomplished. You may not agree with her. You may not think that her policies are the right policies, but she's accomplished. And yet he's reducing her down to her looks and basically saying that she's dumb, she's not so smart, but because she's a good-looking woman, kind of like my wife Melania, she's going to get a free ride from the media. I mean, this is somebody who was effectively nurtured in the 1980s New York Post mentality, the New York tabloids, where this kind of stuff existed and this kind of stuff was okay. He's 70-something years old. He doesn't get that this is not how it is anymore. And the more he talks, the more women, especially women, and the men who care about women, get incredibly offended, because say what you will about Kamala Harris, and again, her name is Kamala. He doesn't even address her by her right name, completely condescending, because he doesn't actually respect anybody who's a woman. He's never respected women. His treatment of women has consistently been horrible. This is a man who sent out a second wife to talk about how great his sex, the sex was with them back in the 80s. And this is still the same kind of mentality he's got. And I think the more people see this, the more they're just going to be turned off. I mean, I agree with Congressman Jolly. This is just an awful, he's defining himself more than he's defining her, actually.
You know, Jim, I wonder if you see a difference in the way that other candidates, whether in primaries or Clinton or Biden in the general election, handle Trump and his attacks. Are they different than how Harris and team are approaching it? I mean, I think she's been pretty subdued. She doesn't play into it. The biting stuff usually is the end of a more substantive line in a speech or something on social media. What do you think of their strategy against Donald Trump, which frankly has foiled a lot of opponents in the past?
Yeah, I think it's really smart, Chris. I mean, for 10 years, the problem for Democrats with Donald Trump has been he says all these crazy things every day, and we can chase all of it, and it's super fun, and you can raise a lot of money to do it. But it doesn't help move votes. And the Harris campaign has been incredibly disciplined not to chase every one of these comments and just stay on their message, stay with the message of hope, ride this momentum they have, where Donald Trump, we're 83 days before the election. We're under 4 weeks before voters in the first state of North Carolina start voting. And Donald Trump hasn't been in a battleground state for 9 days. And the reason, to David's point, is because he doesn't have a message and he has a campaign that's fallen apart. And so the Harris campaign is just sort of letting him sink while they stay focused on building their campaign.
So these outside allies, Jim, that we talked about in our NBC reporting, they do seem to have a strategy. I mean, to summarize, they want to put Joe Biden's record on her. They want to talk about immigration. They want to talk about the economy, areas where they believe and where polls show Trump has been strong. Is maybe the biggest threat to Harris now that Trump somehow actually gets on board with that strategy?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, on one hand, the problem for the Trump campaign is they have a candidate who doesn't understand message and doesn't seem to care what the rest of the campaign or the outside groups is doing. And so you have this dissonance that voters really understand. They look at this and say, this is Donald Trump. We've seen him for a decade. We just don't believe him anymore. That's the fundamental problem, is these swing voters don't believe him anymore. And at the same time, the most important number that I look at every day is the change candidate in this election is now Kamala Harris. And the reason is because people are just sick and tired of Donald Trump. When you look at the battleground state numbers, Chris, he's just kind of frozen at 46 in all of these states, and he can't move above it because he has nothing new to say to these voters.
Well, that leads to an interesting question for me, David. Trump is obviously getting some external help. The leading pro-Trump super PAC is now launching a $100 million advertising blitz ahead of Labor Day. They clearly are going to run commercials in Rust Belt, Sun Belt states over the next 3 weeks. They're going to paint her, Kamala Harris, as soft on crime, a radical, too dangerous for the White House. Do you think advertising an appointed message can overcome perhaps the lack of one from the candidate?
It's the only tool they have. And generally, outside groups can be far more disciplined than the inside candidate-led campaign. And so I think you will see what we otherwise would have expected from a Donald Trump campaign, hard hits on immigration and crime, regardless of where the facts are. But, to Jim's point, there's a ceiling for Donald Trump. He can't gather new voters. All he can do is take some voters or soften the Harris support, the negative partisanship technique here. And I think on immigration, here's the fascinating thing, Chris. Kamala Harris, that speech I believe she gave in Atlanta when she said, I would sign the bipartisan immigration enforcement bill, and Donald Trump wouldn't. So even now, if immigration is the issue, it can't just be on the facts. They're going to have to hit her really personally, really hard. She walked away from the job. She's not up for the job. She's weak. They're going to go after her personally to try to soften her numbers. Look, it's a hard case now to prosecute against Vice President Harris. The 3 missed weeks of the Trump campaign are now going to be hard to make up for.
Well, and she's got something, I'd say, reasonably big, Julie, coming up, which is a huge audience for her speech Thursday night at the DNC. This is next week, obviously, something they're crafting now, right? They had Biden in mind. This can be a very different kind of speech. How does she walk that line? Her success has been, at least in pretty large part, hope, making people feel better about what America can be, what the future can bring. Does she prosecute Donald Trump at the same time?
Well, she's got to prosecute Donald Trump. That's job number one, because she's not running in a vacuum. And also, listen, Biden.
But for that speech?
But for that speech, too. But Biden has a good record, right? Like, people were upset with Joe Biden because of his age. But nevertheless, people were not unhappy with Joe Biden's policies, for the most part. And so she has to take ownership of the policies with which, obviously, people agree. And then she has to chart her own course in places where people might not agree. She is, as you know, that was a great point that Jim made. I mean, she represents change, but she is the sitting vice president. That's a very difficult thing for her to navigate. But it's not that difficult when you think about the fact that she's running against somebody who's basically doing a rerun, right? It's not like Donald Trump is some breath of fresh air. And Americans hate reruns, right? That's why Trump was so appealing to people in 2016. He wasn't so appealing in 2018. In 2020, he flamed out. And I think he's going to flame out in 2024 because everybody's seen the shtick. They're sick of the shtick. There's nothing new. This is just an old guy who's repeating the same stuff he's been repeating for basically a decade over and over again in a way that's making her, somebody who's the sitting incumbent vice president, represent change. That's a pretty interesting thing that Trump has been able to accomplish.